Hey guys, this is Andrew after he just finished recording. So, what you guys, this is just kind of a personal. I didn't get a guest this week. I just wanted to synthesize my thoughts about what I've learned from the past 9 episodes. Um, some things that I just wanted to talk about, share with people. Um, yeah. So, you can expect to kind of learn how to market your business, mental health. I talk a lot about boys' mental health and kind of how people suffered after COVID, my opinion of mental health in the workplace. What's the best social media platform for posting if you're a business? Is AI gonna help in the future? What's gonna happen? Is college even worth it anymore? Like, what's going on here? Do we think people should go to college? And then, how do you manage projects? How do you keep a relatively lean team? Things like that. So, I just want to say, like, I'm not an expert. This is just what I've learned, kind of my current opinions. I'm always open to new ideas. So, if someone pushes me, I'm happy to kind of push back, play devil's advocate, figure out what's best. Um, there's probably going to be a few hot takes in here. Just kind of curious to see what people think. Feel free to engage in comments. Just shoot me a message like, hey, I didn't like this. This is kind of my opinion on it. I'd love to talk to you about it. So, if you are at all interested, shoot me a message. Like I said, just shoot me a message if there's anything in here that irks you, you want to push me on. Absolutely. So, with that, why don't you guys get straight in? Enjoy. All right, we got our coffee, we got binaural beats, we got some questions, and we got some thoughts. So, what did we learn? Question. So, how do you manage product projects? So, this one's kind of an interesting one for me. So I've been experimenting around with how do you do projects? What's kind of the process in terms of websites for developing projects in general? So Sean Jordanson came on the podcast. It's last week's episode, and this will be going. So, and he talks about the critical path method, CPM, on his website. And CPM is planning, helps manage changes and keep your project on time at the lowest cost possible. So that's kind of his idea. He talked about it a little bit. And first things first, it's setting down on paper, what do you need to do first for a website? So again, we're going to use websites as an example. So let's take, for example, redundancy, but with websites. So let's say we're doing just a generic website. First thing that we need to do is we need to sit down with the client and say, hey, what do you want on the website? What is critical? What do you need to say? What's your story? Talk to me about that. Step 2 is modeling the website, kind of designing how it's going to look, what text we're going to need, where we're going to put everything, and getting things going. So now we have a general idea, general layout, what's going on with the website, how are we going to essentially implement this. And we typically do that on Adobe XD. Figma seems to be the most popular. At Tucker Team Digital, we personally use Adobe XD. I like Figma. I just find I've learned Adobe XD more, and they're relatively similar, so there's no point in changing things, right? It isn't like I need to, right? So Adobe XD, send that to the client, say, hey, this is what we got. This is what it's going to look like. What are your thoughts? It's no implementation. It's just a basic design. Then we go into something such as development and copywriting. So what I do is I send this to my copywriter. She's a 1099. And I'm like, hey, I need you to do research for keywords. So what is it going to look like with a website? What do we need to write on the website to make it rank? This is for search engine optimization. You guys don't know a whole lot about that. Then at the same time, I'm developing the website. I'm putting the website into development. I'm building out the features on a temporary domain so that we're not actually interfering with what the client currently has, or if they don't have it, we'll just build it straight on their domain. Then we review with the client, we go over everything, and yeah. So it's a pretty lean process, right? Step 1, talk to the client, what do you need? Step 2, build out design, get approval from the client. Step 3, copyright, so write everything out, make sure it's keyword optimized, and develop the website and actually put it onto the web. and then posting it. That's going to be backlinking everything, putting it on Google Search Console, Google Business Listing, things like that. So there's our step. It's pretty lean. And one thing that I want to note, and one thing that I've learned definitely from talking to people, is keep things leaner than you think. So a lot of people talk about bloat and having a lot of things on a project. Sean was talking about this. This is really interesting. About how, like in construction management specifically, sometimes there's too many, right? There's too many people on the project. You want to make sure the contractors know what's going on here, and managing and making sure that you can get everything done. Adding too much to the project can be costly. So if I say, for example, I have a copywriter, I have someone who does the SEO keyword, who writes the SEO, who finds the keywords. I have someone who draws the design. I have someone who puts it into the front end development, someone who puts it into back end development, right? That's 5 people that I need for, not quite honestly, like all things considered, especially for smaller businesses and not massive websites. There's not a ton of work there that needs to be divvied up that many ways. 2 people is perfectly fine. So keeping things super lean is a super good idea for people, and making sure that you're not bloating everything up. The other question that I had that I wanted to talk about, and kind of what I've learned on, is college even worth it anymore? Like, this seems to be something that I get. A lot of people seem to think college is worth it, and a lot of people seem to think it isn't worth it. And there seems to be this dichotomy between people of yes, no, but there isn't like a gray area. And I think I found that with a couple people. So the first one that I found was the dean of students at UWSP, and he was talking about how, from an economist perspective, it doesn't necessarily make sense to go to college if you can't see a return later on. So he's talking about going to college with intentionality, like a reason to be there. Whereas if you're just going to college for being the next step, please take a year off, take 2 years off, however long you need to figure out what you want to do. And of course, people are like, go to college, you can figure out what you want to do there. No. Just no. The reason I'm saying that is, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to pay 30 grand a year to figure out what I want to do. 30 grand a year. I think people misunderstand how expensive college is. 30 grand is not trivial, especially in your younger years. Like, think about it this way. Putting 30 grand into something, and then you go in and figure out what you want to do. Sure, fine, you get a little bit out of it. But you could do the same thing working a job and making money, supporting yourself, instead of taking out loans to do that. So just food for thought there. Like, if you don't know what you want to do not, for the love of God, go to college. So I also wanted to bring up just some statistics with this, just to kind of point out on college and why I think it's worth it, but you need to go there with intentionality. There seems to be a lot of bloat in colleges, and I'm going to get a lot of pushback for this. But I think tuition is rising, and there's definitely going to be a point in which it just stops. So tuition since 1988, I just got a graph here in front of me that I'm looking at, has rised to, okay, so it's about $6,500 in 2008. And it's even more now. Like I said, it's 30 grand a year. Tuition, I believe this is first semester. And then median income has roughly stayed the same. It looks like it's hovering over like 36, 37,000 after college. Keep in mind, this is factoring graduates. This isn't factoring people who dropped out. So I think people need to understand that the tuition has increased, and so college isn't as much of a bargain as it used to be, especially especially back in the day. So I also wanted to point out that 4 in 10 Americans say a college degree is not too or not at all important in order to get a well-paying job. I also wanted to touch on this. This is another thing that's really interesting to me. I agree, but there's a huge caveat here. Getting a well-paying job does not mean that it's a job that you're going to enjoy, that you're going to like. something that's important to you. A lot of what college is it's giving you the education that you wouldn't be able to necessarily get otherwise. And so if you want to do something in the intellectual sphere, if you want to help someone with medicine, with any of those things, I think college is very important because it gives you a different perspective. If you want to make money, I don't think college is as important. And just kind of food for thought on this is you can make money going into construction. Like, no one's going to argue that. The blue collar trades they're having an uptick. Like, they're having a great comeback. HVAC, construction, electrical, right? Things like that. Having a comeback, and you can make a lot of money in that. And keep in mind here, I think a key word in this is well-paying job, right? It's not saying like you're going to make a ton of money, right? You can do well in those professions. You can do well in business, right? You don't necessarily need a college degree to go into business. Yes, it's harder. You can do it though. Sales is a great example for this. Sales isn't something that you need a college degree for. You don't need to go to college to go into sales. I guarantee you, if you have the drive and if you have the work ethic, you will do good in sales. Guarantee it. Now, it's not for everyone, but you can get a well-paying job there. So I think college, again, is about intentionality. What are you going for? What's important to you? How are you planning on presenting yourself to the world? Like, what is important about college to you? Why are you going there? What is the intent? We'll take me as a great example of this. So why am I going to college? I'm going to college because I want to learn about business, right? This is what I'm doing. I want to build the business. That's evidently what I want to do out of college. It's risky. Yes, I get it. That's not for everyone. But the reason I'm going to college is because that college education is allowing me to build on top of that. I can build the business while going to college to learn about the business, right? There's intentionality there. So I'm getting a return on my investment. And I know that's like mind-boggling to so many people, that like going to college with just going to college without thinking about it seems so normal to people that I think we really need to get the intentionality back in college. Next one, AI. This is a really good one. I was talking to Michael Hemlick about this. Hemlick? I don't know how to pronounce that. But he said, and I quote, "Serving Velveeta in your Michelin 3-star restaurant is like using ChatGPT to write your marketing." Yes and no. I'm going to refute this one a little bit. And kind of reason being is I think people don't seem to understand that AI does a really good CB job, but it doesn't do an A job. So I've said this a couple times on the podcast. AI is essentially about getting the average of everything, right? So let me phrase that. AI is like getting the average of everything, because what it does is it's trained on data sets. So ChatGPT, for example, was given a crawler, and a crawler just looks at the web and grabs everything that it can get. It's like Cookie Monster when it sees cookies, but for essentially the web. And that's roughly how ChatGPT was trained. Of course, there's some intentionality to it, but that's by and large how it was trained. And so AI is just, in ChatGPT's case, the average of the internet. And of course, you can cherry pick to make sure that it's somewhat accurate information, but that's kind of how ChatGPT was trained. And you can see this in, let's look at Google's as well. So Google was trained, the Google AI search, where it kind of gives you that response. There was the uptick with that, where everyone was like, oh my Lord, like, look at what it is giving me. Like, it's telling me to like jump off of a bridge or like do these crazy things. Why did it say that? Well, it was trained on Reddit. Reddit, of all places, is unhinged, I guess is one word to phrase it. Like, it's not it's known for A, niche information, and B, stupid responses. So that's what you get for training on Reddit. Like, I'm sorry, Google. That's what you deserve. Um, so yeah, bringing it back to kind of the serving Velveeta in your Michelin 3-star restaurant, I agree. Like, I agree, but I disagree. I think it's great and really useful for certain things, but I don't think it should be used as your primary source. So, like I said, AI is just kind of the average of everything. And I think it's going to do great things. I think it's going to be super useful. I think it's going to make a lot of things a lot cheaper. Like I'm seeing this with search engine optimization. Um, Actually, I don't know the name of it, but there's essentially an AI search engine optimization tool that's like it's dirt cheap. I don't even know what it is, but it's dirt cheap. And it does a solid like B, C job. It's nothing crazy, but it'll be great for smaller businesses because you can at least rank for whatever keywords you're looking for or something, right? You can at least rank for something. And it's not going to get to you to that first and second spot, but it'll at least get you so you can bid or fight for the last 20% because 80% come to the first and second. So just to plug there, search engine optimization, if you can get to the first and second links, you're cooking. Like you're set. 80% click on those first two links. So food for thought there. I also wanted to talk about with AI in Will It Hurt or Help? I think Kevin Newman, again, also had a really great take on this. He's the Dean of Students at UWSP. He was talking about reallocation of resources. And what does that mean, right? Like, what in terms of AI how is that going to work? So I think what it's going to end up doing is it's going to take people away from kind of this marketing copy, like B, C tier, like job roles of like, oh, we can do a little bit here, we can do a little bit there. And I think it's really, excuse me, I think it's really going to give people back time to do things in the actual real world. Because AI isn't at the point where it can do a whole lot in the real world, unfortunately. It's primarily copy. It's writing like descriptions of things. It's summarizing things. I think it's great for that. I think like I said, it'll just give people time back in their day to do more important things. The one thing that I do kind of wonder about this is, will AI reduce the work week? I don't know. I think that would be something that would be really interesting to see if it does. And that'll just kind of be how we continue. Or are we going to be the true capitalist economy of like more output? So I don't know. I do have a link here that I'm just looking at from nu.edu, so National University. Just some AI statistics for you. I thought this one was really interesting. So across age groups, the most common AI tech used on a weekly basis was virtual assistants similar to Siri and Alexa. So if you don't know, those have AI integrated in them or are getting AI integrated in them. I thought it was really interesting that there seems to be a dip here. So 18 to 25-year-olds are using AI or these virtual assistant AIs, around 30% of them on a weekly basis. And this is on a weekly basis. 25.3% of 26 to 40-year-olds, 14% of 41 to 60-year-olds. But the highest was actually 61 and up at 38%. So, 30.8%. I thought this was really interesting because it kind of shows how AI can help the older demographics as much as it can the younger demographics. And I think this is going to be something really interesting is AI going to be aided as a caretaker? Like, is that going to be something that comes back? And again, AI is all over. I haven't done enough research outside of the marketing sphere in terms of AI to really know what's going to go on here. But I definitely think that Kevin Newman had the point of reallocation of like, AI is going to go here. It's going to take this over. But then we're going to have jobs over here open up so we can put more people here, or we can help reduce the work week. Things like that, I think are going to be really, really interesting to see where we go, what happens. And like I said, not a clue what's going to happen there. Another question I had written was, what's the best social media platform for posting? Preface here, I'm not in social media as much as I should be. I do LinkedIn, which seems to be the best for B2B. I was doing really good with Instagram for a while. I got a lot of likes, I don't know, I was probably running around 10,000 impressions a month, give or take, which, don't get me wrong, like that's not an insane amount by any stretch of the imagination, but it just kind of puts into perspective kind of where I was at. So, I don't know. The answer seems to be complicated. Just in Vlanko? Yeah, sorry, mate. Not a clue how to pronounce your last name. I'm gonna butcher it. So he seems to be pushing heavily for LinkedIn, especially for higher ticket and B2B businesses. Just because of the people who use LinkedIn, it generally tends to be business owners, marketers, salesmen, like people who are really heavy integrated into businesses. That's where LinkedIn is intended for. That's the demographic that you're going to find on there. And I think he has a point. Like, you're going to get less impressions, less reach, but the reach that you're going to get is going to be more impactful because of the people that you're looking at. Like this podcast, for example, I'm sitting at probably around like 20 to 30% business owners watching it, which is really cool because, well, who am I trying to talk to? I'm trying to talk to business owners, people in C-suite, right? People who actually have the power to make decisions about their marketing. That's who I'm trying to talk to. So I think that's really, really important there. I would say Instagram and TikTok do have their advantages, especially for B2C. So if, for example, you're trying to market to the average Wisconsinite, I think Instagram or TikTok is going to be really well just because of the sheer volume of people on there. Facebook too, don't get me wrong, depending on your demographic, but I think you need to be mindful of that, right? Like Facebook is going to have like 30, 40-year-olds. Instagram and TikTok are going to have your teens and your 20-year-olds. So you have to be kind of mindful of what platform you're using. Look at your target demographic and what are you really going to hammer in on. I would say Instagram and TikTok are probably arguably easier to grow on than Facebook. Yeah. I'd say, to be fair, I haven't done a whole lot on Facebook, so I can't talk too much. But it doesn't seem hard to grow on TikTok or Instagram if you know what you're doing. So I also brought up there's an article that I have linked here, and it ranks kind of the top 5 social media platforms. So Facebook, just because of the sheer volume of monthly users. Instagram, just because it has the surge with Reels. Twitter, that's an interesting one because it's text only. This one was written a little bit ago, and Twitter seems to be having a downfall. Not as kind of X. There's definitely a lot going on there. I'm not going to touch too much on it, but that's what seems to be the case. I don't know if it's as good for business as it once was. And then LinkedIn was the other really big one, and then Pinterest. Again, Pinterest I haven't touched much, so I'm not going to speak too much on that. But I would say for B2B, LinkedIn works like you would not believe. If you connect with someone, you're like, hey, dude, I saw this in your profile. Like, honestly, I want to talk about it. Let's just connect. And I try not to sell people as much as I can. I'm really just trying to talk to people, see if I can help them or if they can help me, right? Just connect with people, be personable, be a person to help them out, connect with them cold. So yeah. What is the best social media platform for posting? For B2B, LinkedIn. For anything else, depends on your target demographic. So it's going to vary. So another one that I was talking was mental health with COVID and Dr. Robert Glover. So I think this is a really, really important topic to talk on. So With Dr. Robert Glover, he talked about specifically in COVID-19, he said, and I quote, "It fucked us all up." So, yes, I think COVID-19 caused a lot of isolation issues. And I think it really hurt a lot of people being isolated. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, right? Should we have been locked down? Should we not? I'm just going to speak from the fact of like, it fucked us all up mentally. Like it caused some serious issues, especially with my friend group. I know you can kind of tell they're a little bit like, I'm not going to say behind, like that's kind of cruel, but I'm saying like this generation especially seems behind in making friends, talking to people. They're not as comfortable outside, right? It's really difficult to get out there when all you did was you sit on your phone and social media and you couldn't go out. Like you physically could not leave the house. Like, I think that was really hard and it caused a lot of people to suffer, especially that were social creatures. Not having friends sucks. Not being able to visit your friends sucks, right? You want to be able to see your friends. So, one thing that I also talked about was with Tara Parks. So, she's talking specifically about work. She quote, "It was really anxiety and depression that got me to where I was. And I had at one point, I was given an ultimatum. And if I couldn't hit my numbers, then I needed to take a leave of absence." So in that instance, she's talking about her experience at her old employer and how sales and how they kind of gave her an ultimatum and like, oh, like, dude, like you need to do your work. So I wanted to put backlash on that. I want to disagree with this kind of, and here's kind of why. So Tara talks about it in the sense of they should have just worked with me, right? Like they need to help me figure it out. Like it's not my job. Like I should have kept my job because of this anxiety and depression. And yes, I agree. I think that firing someone because they're clearly in a bad state of mind is not the right way to go. But what I also think needs to be talked about is the fact that if you can't work for the company because of something, you need to figure that out. Like, it's not on the employer's job if they're paying you to fix it, right? I truly think a good employer should help you with it, but I don't think that they're required to. So, from an employer's perspective, if someone's really struggling with this, I would sit them down and I would be like, "Listen, mate, like your numbers are struggling. What's going on here? Is there anything that I can help with? What would help you?" Right? How can I help you help me? That's the best way to go about it. And I think that's really important to think about. So how can I help you help me? Right? Like there's a lot going on there. Um yes, I agree anxiety and depression suck. Like I've been there, right? I've had my fair share of rough times, right? I think everyone has. And I think being in that depressive state, being in that anxious state of like, you just don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to work, right? I think you just need to start. That's so Dr. Mike, he's massive. Just literally look him up. Doctor spelt out Mike. And he's just like, dude, put on your shoes. I was watching a podcast with him. It was Diary of a CEO. Put on your shoes. Like, put your shoes by your bed. Do that. Jordan Peterson's one is make your bed. Start with something so simple. Just do that. It's the baby steps, because when you're in an anxious or a depressed state, you want to take little steps to get yourself out of there, right? Slowly, over and over and over. And so I'm going to say that's what it is. And I got a lot of back. Again, I think Tara has a really good point in that, like, it's really, really hard. But especially being someone who's very skills before pills, I definitely think that if you're in a really anxious and depressed state, I think that you just need to start so small with getting out. Start being a little bit uncomfortable each day. I think get the skills so that you can deal with that anxiety and depression. And yeah, I just think that's where you should start. Again, go see a therapist, right? I'm not a psychiatrist by any stretch of the imagination, but I definitely think starting there is a really good spot if you feel depressed, anxious, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to get out of that. One of the other things that I wanted to touch on is with mental health is boys' mental health, just because this is something I'm relatively passionate about, of like, guys are suffering, dude, like, and I get a lot of backlash for this. Like, people are like, but they don't seem like it. And like, what's going on? And I think people misunderstand that. Like, a lot of boys repress their emotions and sit there and like, dude, like, who cares? Right. I think boys just, they need an outlet. And there's a lot of that. I want to say there's a lot. I think one of the best people that I've seen on this is the Tin Men on Instagram. I saw him on a podcast. I think it was Chris Williamson's podcast. But he was talking about men's mental health and kind of how important it is and how boys are suffering. And I think that's something that needs to be talked about more, because you really get out of it by talking about it, by doing little things, right? Yeah. So I just think it's really important. So I'm going to read you a post here, just an Instagram post. So it says, beneath the surface of male suicide lies a murky world of icy darkness and the shards of hidden trauma. Like an iceberg, we limit men's issues to what we can see. That icy white cap, and never look for what lies below. Beneath the calm, demure surface often hides stories of abused men or bullied boys, tales of trauma or neglect, and sexual violence, the life of the addict, the lonely, or those fighting a losing battle for child custody. Stories we ignore and wave away as not possible, or as insignificant or arrogantly berate or hijacking the conversation. And so the secret epidemic, unnoticed, drifts closer and closer still, until it crashes into the side of our boat, making real what we chose to ignore, to devastating consequences. And there's a lot more there. I want to say, like, seriously, male suicide is a huge problem. So male suicide is being searched increasingly on Google. So it's becoming more popular. And I think we still have ways to go, right? We need to keep going. We need to talk about kind of what's happening, because like I said, a lot of guys are just hiding it, and there needs to be an outlet. Like I said, I'm quite passionate about this issue, just because I've seen a decent amount of guys suffering and they won't do anything about it. And so I wanted to sit down and talk about that. One thing that I also wanted to talk about on that same topic is, where are boys going to go? Like I mentioned this earlier a little bit about outlets. So mental health, kind of what's happening with that. Where can boys go to talk about their mental health? And I think we're losing places, right? We're losing men's outlets for that. The big one that stood out to me was Boy Scouts. They recently let females into Boy Scouts. And I'm aware this is going to be a hot take, but I still think they should have a separate, like a separate week where it's like boys only, or like a boys only something. Because when guys are closer to someone that they feel close with or are similar with, or yeah, like when they're close to someone that's similar to them, they're more likely going to talk about their mental issues and places to go about that. And that used to be the boys only clubs or Boy Scouts. And we have this for girls. Like we see this with Girl Scouts. Like Girl Scouts is still female only. There's a lot of just female only clubs, there's a lot of like exclusive clubs for people in certain demographics. So you see this in student unions. You see this in like the women's only business. Uh, and and I really think we need something like that for guys so that they can go and talk. Like even if it's not something for business, even if it's not something for scouts, if it's just some sort of club where boys can go. And again, I get it. Like Boy Scouts was kind of the pinnacle of this. Like this is where guys can go. So I'm using it as an example. But we really need that for guys. So I think mental health, it's all fucked up. Like it is. It truly is. And I've seen so much from so many people in my life that I wanted to take a portion of this podcast and talk about it. All right. The last question I had on a happier note. How do I market my business? Simple, I guess. I go to networking groups. I do this podcast. I call DM people on LinkedIn. Yeah. I mean, B2B is a little bit different than B2C. I think that's a really important distinction for people to make. So B2B is more about finding not only the right people, but like a hyper-focused right people. Whereas B2C, you can kind of do like this catch-all in a niche. Granted, you still have to be niche down, but you can kind of catch all and then you can kind of cherry pick the people that you need, or you can... B2C is definitely different than B2B. I'll just leave it at that. For people who are looking to market their business, I would say, a little bit biased here, but start with a website. And reason being is your website is like the online quintessential flyer where everyone goes. It's where people go to be like, what does this business do? How do they help me? What's their niche? Kind of, it tells your story. And so I think that's a great place for people to start. Like, even if you don't want to hire a website developer, just make a landing page for yourself. Do something so you're online. Maybe it's your Google business listing, just something. After you kind of build out your website, you can go through other marketing, right? You can do social media marketing. You can do SEO on your website, so search engine optimization. You can do email marketing. You can do in-person marketing. You can funnel people to the website. But what you can do is you can draw people to that, and then the website can convert for you. It can sell you. Your website can be like your salesperson. So I know, like I said, I'm a big proponent of search engine optimization on your website so that you're found on Google, Yahoo, whatever search engine you're using. Social media marketing, I think, is a great tool, especially if you're a good person on camera and you can present personally. Like, I naturally didn't start this way. Like, I've worked very hard to talk on camera, still uncomfortable. But I think if you're someone who can do that in a relatively good manner, you're relatively articulate, I think you'll do really well on social media. Email marketing is another great one because you can email people and be like, hey, here you go. Like, this is my website. This is what I do. This is how I help. You can do case studies. Email marketing is just go ham. Like, there's so many different things you can do with it. You can do newsletters. You can do products. You can do sales. Like, there's 1,000 different things you can do. Yeah, marketing, I think if you're really interested in it, like, that's one of those things of, if you're watching the podcast, feel free to reach out to me and I'll help you out. Because marketing is going to be very specific to each individual person. And there's 1,000 different ways you can do it. It's all about strategy. One thing that I did want to talk about is kind of this new wave of marketing and sales. So people used to do like this sales funnel, right? And start at the top, that's really base layer. That's like your social media. And then it would bring you to like email marketing, right? So it adds you to the email list. And then you would go to your landing page once you clicked on something in the email, and the landing page just got you to a call, and that call would be where they sell you. It's like, okay. Yes, that works for one sale. But what I'm seeing, or at least what I've saw on LinkedIn, like I don't know, a month or so ago, is the infinite sales loop idea. It's this idea that instead of just trying to sell someone once, you just build the relationship with them. That's all you're trying to do, right? You keep providing value and value and value and value and value, or you're showing your value and showing your value and showing your value and being like, dude, this is how I can help you. This is how I can help you. This is how I can help you. And then you build that relationship. And slowly they kind of like come in, they're like, hey, can you help me? And you're like, absolutely. Like, I'm here. I'm here for you, man. So I think that's a really interesting thing of like the infinite loop idea. I really like it because it's more about building relationships than just trying to sell someone, right? The person isn't a commodity. They're actually a person. And I think that's also coming back with the personalized thing, right? Because it's more relational. It feels more relational, at least, compared to this, like, buy my product, buy my product, buy my product. It's the, I can help you. Yeah, absolutely, I can help you. So I think it's better for everyone involved because companies can help you more than they could anywhere else, and thus they'll get more out of each customer. And I know that, like, it sounds terrible to the customer, but like they get more out of you in a sense, but you also get significantly more out of them because not only do you trust them, you know that all of their products work, right? Like I think that's really key, like truly, really key of making sure, like, of building relationships. I'm just going to leave it at that. Like infinite sales loop, building relationships. I think that's really great. And I think that's really the only way to do marketing. So those are all the questions I had for you guys. I just wanted to say this was easier than I thought it would be. I thought this would suck a lot more. Not going to lie to you. With that, you can find all my links in the description. I do a newsletter every week of like 3 things I learned, and then 2, like, what's going on in the marketing industry, what's going on in the digital industry, that sort of thing. 2 news. And then a client case study. If you need any help with marketing, reach out to me. Just shoot me a message. LinkedIn works, email me, whatever. Any way you can get a hold of me, shoot me a message and I'll respond. So yeah, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed and have a great day.